Good morning, everyone. This is Tammy Zadunik, Director of Training and Education with the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. I'll be your moderator for today's program. Thanks for joining us. This is a private presentation not open to the media. Secondary recording of any portion of this presentation is strictly prohibited. Today, we're pleased to present Benefits Reimagined, Leading Perspectives on Benefit Trends. The webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly for on-demand viewing. Participant cameras and audio will be turned off during the presentation. If you do have any questions for our presenters, please use the raise your hand function with that button, and you'll be given access to unmute. If you need any other assistance during the presentation, please type your comments into the chat box and I'll respond as quickly as I can. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Scott Harris, Vice President of Business Development for Lovasco.
Thank you, Tammy. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Benefits Reimagined. My name, as Tammy said, is Scott Harris, and I'm with Lovasco Consulting Group. I'm joined by three of my colleagues today who will introduce themselves more formally later in our presentation this morning. On behalf of our team, we're very pleased to be with you to talk about leading concepts in benefit that we hope you find both interesting and relevant to your business. We would like to thank the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and Tammy Zadunik for providing us with this opportunity today to be with you. So looking at our agenda today, we have 5 topics of conversation that we're going to be reviewing with you today that we hope you find very intriguing and interesting. The first is communication, where we're going to be outlining different ideas to challenge the way that perhaps you communicate with your teams today. That'll be followed by health and wellness, where we're going to talk about innovative ideas that you may incorporate into your overall health and wellness strategy. Following that will be wealth at work, where we're going to talk about what the next generation of workplace savings solutions could look like for your company, followed by mission critical employees, where we're going to talk about concepts specifically designed for the leaders of your company to keep them engaged and retain them at your workplace. And last but not least, leading work environments. We're going to talk about 2 different concepts, while not benefits per se, that we feel are important to creating a overall attractive workplace where you can keep your employees fully engaged at your company. As I mentioned, there's 3 colleagues joining me today. Mike Lovasco, who will be handling our first 2 topics, Mike Eiley, who will be discussing wealth at work, and Chris Shuby talking about mission critical employees, and along with myself. In a moment, I'm going to be turning the presentation over to my colleague, Mike Lovasco, providing a quick overview of our firm, followed by the first 2 topics. Mike?
All right. Thank you, Scott. I hope no one was scared away by our agenda. There's a lot of content to cover, and frankly, don't have that much time. So I have a tendency to talk fast during these types of discussions. I've got 2 sections to cover. So bear with me. I want to just set the stage. For those of you who don't know us, Lovasco Consulting Group, we're a benefits consulting firm. We have 3 areas where we focus: health and welfare consulting, retirement plan consulting, and executive benefits. I'm one of the members of the benefits consulting team, and we work with businesses to help them optimize their benefits program. I think I've said benefits like 4 or 5 times now. You're going to hear it a lot today. It's really what we do. We're helping organizations keep people at the center of these decisions that are focused on benefits, and really taking care of the people that are important in their lives, which a lot of times for employees, it's their families. That's the picture right here. So as we get going today, we're going to talk about communications as our first topic, and the challenge that employers have. Really, business leaders are dealing with employees that are burned out, emotionally run down, and there's a lot of change fatigue that's kind of set in. And so employers have kind of that set of characteristics, and then the fact that a lot of people are still working in a hybrid environment or working from home. Digital overload is something that happens, right? There's that fatigue that sets in. Too many phone calls or too many Zoom calls, too many emails, just too much screen time. So how do you communicate with people that are in that state? That's really the challenge that business leaders have. And so we joke a little bit, is print making a comeback? don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. Bonus points to anyone who knows what R&B song that's from. There's been this resurgence of employees spending time at home with families. And we know that benefits are a family decision, and spouses are heavily involved in the decision-making process. So if you're only targeting your employees at their office or where they work, you're missing half your audience. You want to make sure your message gets home to the dependents. And so joking a little bit about print, right? Making a comeback. Print's always been here, but how is it important in terms of your benefits communication strategy? So there's kind of two trends on this page that we're going to address. The first is you have a piece of paper, hard copy, that directs employees to your digital assets, your digital communications. And so the first is infographics, right? A hard copy or digital infographic. We live in the age of instant gratification. When you're trying to communicate something, especially something that could be considered boring or challenging to understand, like benefits, it's best to just come out and say what you want to say, make it easy for people to read. And that's why infographics are so great. You can scan and highlight and get key points quickly and really get that information to employees. Second trend is using QR codes to share your information. I think most individuals are accustomed to using QR codes. Think back maybe 12 months ago, you were at a restaurant, you had to scan the QR code to get the menu to pull up. And that same experience can be tailored to get your employee communications out to your workforce, whether it's a postcard that's mailed home, or let's say a poster that's somewhere at a prominent location where employees gather. People scan the QR code, they're redirected to that digital asset, and they're consuming your content that way. And that's how print is kind of making a comeback. So when you're thinking about your approach, I just kind of outlined a couple opportunities to tweak what you're doing. You got to think, is it working? How do you know if it's working and it's hitting the mark? Have you asked your employees? Surveys are a great way to figure out if your message is working. And I like to joke, it's a little bit of a pop quiz, right? You send some content out, wait a few hours, wait a day or two, and ask your staff, hey, what did you guys think of this content? And give them a question or two that should be relevant from that material. So taking that a step further, segmentation is a great way to tailor your message to a specific audience. We think that one size fits all is not the appropriate approach to communications. There's the WIFA mindset, which stands for what's in it for me. If you break down your messaging and think about kind of the demographic profile of someone, so their age, the psychographic profile, which is how they think, behavioral profile, which is how they act, or geographic profile, which is how they live. There's 4 opportunities to tailor your message. And so if you're able to do that, there's a higher likelihood that that message will hit home. So an easy example, think of an HSA account, right? I'm assuming that most people on this call know what an HSA is. If we're looking at demographic profile, someone's age really will determine how they think about HSAs. If you're, let's say, a millennial versus a baby boomer, the HSA characteristics that you might want to advertise are totally different. So that's one example of how segmentation could be applied. The last item from a benefits communication standpoint, oops, I just jumped one too far. There we go. Last item from a benefits standpoint, when it comes to communications, is going mobile, right? If you're not getting to your employees on their cell phones, you're missing the most effective communication tool out there. 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. That's an amazing stat. I think emails is maybe 10% are read within 3 minutes. And so there's group text messaging platforms that a lot of individuals have interacted with in a retail environment. Think about the last time you got a text message from Verizon or from, I just got one from Swell, which is a company that makes aluminum water bottles. And I'm getting maybe a quarterly or a monthly text message that says, hey, there's some new promotion going on at Verizon or at Swell. Click on this link to learn more. And I click on the link, I can go see what the offer is. That same principle can be applied to your communications. Think about open enrollment. Hey, it's time for open enrollment. We need you to enroll and learn more. Click here. What happens? Employee clicks the link, they get drawn to your HRS platform, and they can enroll digitally. And we've seen a lot of employers roll this out, and it's awesome. It's a really great solution. So that kind of concludes the communication trends. And now we're going to hit on some trends in the health and welfare space. To give you guys a moment to look at these two individuals. Hopefully they're familiar. You have Tom Brady on the left and Tiger Woods on the right. besides being elite athletes, what do these guys have in common, right? They both have coaches. Tom Brady is working with Bruce Arians right now, also longtime, student of Bill Belichick. And Tiger Woods, in his heyday, was working with Hank Haney. And there's been an emergence in the business world of organizations that want to build resiliency in their workforce. And you might be thinking, hey, we've got career development, we offer mentoring, we've got an EAP. All of these are places where employees can go to talk to someone. And that's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about organizations like Boone Health or Lyra that all they do is exclusively focus on coaching and really providing an outlet for employees to have a one-on-one dialogue with an accredited coach who can help them focus on personal growth, career development, maybe well-being, maybe it's mental health. It's really an issue that's brought to the coach by the employees, and resiliency is the theme. Helping overcome challenges, helping achieve goals. This is a trend that's kind of taken off. And I'll share with you that we use Boone Health at Labasco. We piloted this before we roll it out to our employees and to our clients, and it's just been a great tool. So another trend, if I could see your hands, I'd say quick show of hands, how many people have used all of their PTO this year? And I'll ask my panelists, who's used all of their PTO this year? Anyone, raise your hand. I didn't think so, right? So we know that it's a great time to kind of plug this message as we get to the end of the year and employees think about, gosh, can I roll over my PTO? Taking PTO is a good thing. It's restorative. There's a ton of benefits that go into using your PTO. I'm really not going to talk about those. I'm just going to talk about the implications it has on a business when you don't use your PTO and you can't roll it over. For one, CFOs don't like liabilities. And if you're rolling over PTO, it creates a liability for your business. And employees don't like losing the value of their PTO. So what is the possible solution? PTO exchange. This is a new, benefits platform that's come online recently. It allows organizations to monetize the value of accrued but unused PTO, and then gives employees the opportunity to attribute that to a purpose or cause that they get to select. And this is really cool, in my opinion. Think about that 40 hours of PTO that you want to roll over. Let's monetize that, and let's have you put it in your 401k, put it in your HSA, attribute it to whatever student loans or debt you need to repay. That's kind of that financial wellness bucket. And obviously, if you want to give it to the community, there's a lot of great organizations that would love contributions from employees and employers. And then once travel kind of comes back online, you could, pay for a trip. So this is a great trend. We think there's a lot of opportunities for employees and employers to take advantage of PTO exchange. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Another trend for self-insured employers are stop loss captives, right? So you think about your stop loss premiums, they're typically increasing at a double-digit rate year over year. You really don't have a lot of control over them. Stop loss captives provides many benefits to employers, but the biggest is if you have a great year, being able to participate in the return of premiums to you as an employer and to your fellow captive members. And so if you have a CFO or a business owner that's really keen on making an investment in your business, stop loss captive is a great way to do that. Again, only for self-insured employers. There are some fully insured captives, but this is most prevalent for self-funded employers. Whoops. There we go. This is my catch-all slide for benefits. I just wanted to highlight some considerations that you might add or explore for your benefits program. I'll just caution you that these things have to have a fit in your overall total reward strategy. So caregiver support, amazing benefit. How are you giving your employees the tools to support their caregivers and helping them find caregivers, right? That's a really relevant issue the last few months leading into the holidays as well. And so think about what that might do for your organization. Is the return appropriate? Will your employees use it? Don't just jump out there and think, gosh, this is awesome. It's a new trend. I want to plug it into a benefits program. So that's kind of the conclusion of the benefits portion of this section. Again, the purpose just was to kind of scratch the surface on some of these topics and to give everyone a good sense of kind of where the chatter's at in the benefits world. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Mike Eiley.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. I'm just checking to see. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, again, my name is Mike Eiley, and I lead the retirement plan consulting group here at Lovasco Consulting Group. I've been overseeing 401k and pension and other workplace savings programs for the better part of 22 years now. And we're going to talk a little bit about wealth at work and really how we can reimagine that. So if we start off with just thinking about wealth at work, particularly retirement wealth, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is the 401k plan. But I'll offer the question, is offering a 401k plan enough? And how would we reimagine workplace savings today? So in order to answer this question, I'm reminded of a very simple quote. In order to move forward, we have to look back. So let's do that for a moment. So the employee pension plan, so the original workplace retirement savings vehicle was the pension plan, which dates back to 1875. As you may know, the defined benefit plans, as the name states, promises to pay a specific benefit to an employee when they reach retirement age. The benefit is typically expressed as a percentage of their final salary multiplied by the years of service. Pension plans offered a number of great benefits to employees, including guaranteed income in retirement, regardless of their life expectancy, no savings rate or investment decisions to make, and most importantly, there was no ability to opt out of a pension plan other than quitting your job. Executives in charge of hiring loved the pension plan as it was a great tool to attract and retain long tenured employees. Unfortunately, the defined benefit nature of pension plans presented employers with several challenges. Those included complexities in properly funding future pension obligations, given all the variables involved, estimating liabilities, managing investment volatility, and other issues, and balance sheet and funding volatility risk. It distracted executives from their core business. We saw some cases where up to 1/3 to 1/2 of balance sheet risk came from pension obligations from some companies. So if we fast forward, the financial crisis of 2008 unfortunately caught most pension plan sponsors off guard, as pension plan assets were way overweight stocks. The funded status eroded practically overnight, leaving corporations with a much higher liability on their balance sheets. The 2008 would begin the end of corporate pension plans as we know it. So meanwhile, Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1978, which included a provision adding Section 401k to the IRS code. This allowed employees to begin being taxed on deferred compensation, avoid being taxed on deferred compensation. The 401k was originally set up as a supplemental savings plan, understanding the primary retirement savings vehicle is the pension plan. However, given the rapid decline in popularity around the defined benefit pension plan, the 401k quickly became the primary savings vehicle for employees to accumulate retirement benefit at work. So fast forwarding to today, the 401k is that primary retirement savings benefit for employees. Employers are very happy they do not need to take the financial risk of offering a pension plan. But the question is, did the 401k plan actually replace what the pension plan left behind? With the 401k, the burden of decision has unfortunately been shifted to the employee. They are now given so many options regarding their retirement savings. What investments should they select? How much money should they defer from their paycheck? Do I have enough saved to provide adequate retirement income when I retire? So many different decisions. As well-intended as employers were, the myriad of options with the 401k plan left most employees very confused on what action to take. No or very low enrollment rates left many on the sidelines as well. This resulted in relatively low average savings rates for the typical American 401k plan. So here's the controversial idea. We need to stop thinking that employees need to be educated into making these critical retirement savings decisions. Trying to give employees enough information to make their own decision to opt in to the right savings rates and investment decisions just has not worked. You may be asking, what do we do differently? It's simple. We need to understand that we can get employees 90% of the way to proper savings rates and investment strategies just by setting appropriate defaults for them. So 15%. How do we do this? I want you to think about that number 15%. Think back to the days of the pension plan. If you do the math, employers needed to set aside roughly 10 to 15% of someone's pay per year to meet future pension obligations. Conversely, today's typical 401k plan typically auto-enrolls at about 3% of compensation. It's just not enough. We need to set the right savings rates for them because they will not do it themselves. The total savings rate should be closer to 15% if the 401k is going to act like the old pension plan did. All right. So you may be thinking, my people will not stay enrolled if I enroll them at 15% of their pay. They will opt out of the 401k plan altogether. I'm here to tell you that statistics tell us otherwise. Let's consider a non-financial opt-out versus opt-out versus opt-in statistic. The chart on the page shows various countries' organ donor rates with opt-in versus opt-out policies. Countries that leave the decision to opt in have very low adoption rates. More importantly, countries that opt out have opt-out policies have very high rates. That's something to consider. So from an investment perspective, secondly, setting a default investment that will automatically shift its posture over time. Yes, we understand that one size doesn't fit all from an investment perspective, but the reality is one size does fit most. We'll save a deep dive on the investment strategy for another talk. Once we get the default savings and investment strategy down to work like the old pension plans did, we can then begin to reimagine how to engage employees regarding their wealth at work. When surveyed, employees indicated that the #1 stress in life was financial or money matters. Your millennials didn't have enough emergency savings. Gen X and baby boomers don't know if they can retire when they want. Instead of spending your time explaining what stocks and bonds are, employees need access to quality, unbiased financial guidance. For example, we've regularly conducted financial education sessions that begin to engage employees on various financial planning topics, such as developing an emergency savings plan, evaluating Social Security, and saving for higher education. If and when employees engage with us one-on-one, we're able to provide them with the basic financial plan as part of their employee benefit offering by their employer. While we want to start the conversation about wealth at work, we understand that a more intimate dialogue is had at home. The pandemic has made the video call the new normal. Telemedicine has proved that it can work. Your workplace financial wellness should include it as well. So what are our takeaways? #1, let's stop focusing all our efforts on getting employees to save the right amount and invest the right way. We can solve all these things by designing the 401k to work like our old pension plans did. Then Let's shift our focus to offering a financial planning guidance as an employee benefit. Let's make financial wellness part of the corporate culture. That concludes my section, and I will turn it over.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. My name is Chris Schuppe. It's certainly a privilege to be with you today. I've been an executive benefits consultant for the past 18 years, really helping organizations to design and manage benefit plans and benefit structures to attract, retain, and reward key personnel at the leadership level. And as there has been much discussion related to the current labor markets, for those individuals that have demonstrated success really at the executive level, their skills are always in demand in the marketplace. They always have options, and they're always at risk to being lost to an outside opportunity. So in fact, looking at a recent survey by Witt Kiefer, which is an executive recruiting firm, they polled executives from around the country, 95% indicated that although they're not actively looking, they would be at least open to a conversation to leaving an organization. So these are typically C-suite executives and key managers that have a tremendous amount of experience and in-depth knowledge regarding the company. They drive revenue, they manage teams and execution of business plans, and are often champions of a company's culture. And their departure, often unexpected, can be very disruptive to a company's plans. Now, most organizations face very common challenges as it relates to their executive teams, attracting quality management and executive talent, making sure that the right people are in the right seats, creating management incentives that are effective and reward the performance that you're looking for, to have those people in place to execute their vision, then retaining those key performers to ensure that they stay in place for the long term, and then restoring retirement income for key executives that really with some of the limits that we see on 401k plans in the current regulatory environment. So we want to walk through a few considerations that's not really meant to be a technical analysis of plans that are available, but more so just to get you thinking about your own organization based on what we see currently in the marketplace. So when we look at rewarding and retaining, we want to look at financial structures where there is a financial incentive to stay. When those opportunities arise from the outside, where there's recruiters involved with some strings attached. So it's the quintessential golden handcuff type of arrangement. Now, these plans work very well and are very effective when ownership does not have an interest in relinquishing any kind of equity in the firm in the form of outright stock or stock options or even any kind of phantom stock. So there's generally three types of arrangements that we'll look at. Looking at the first two boxes are actually one plan combined into one. And this is really the basic level. So a Section 162 bonus plan is essentially bonus arrangements where you secure individual life insurance policies for a select group of management. You then fund those life insurance policies through bonuses to really accelerate the cash value in the life insurance policies. And then what happens is that over time, you can turn those policies over to the individual executives as outright life insurance or to access the cash value to actually supplement their retirement income. And where the REBA comes into play, which is a restrictive bonus arrangement, is really the golden handcuff component. This puts a restriction on the cash value on the policy, so the employee can't actually access that cash value until they satisfy that vesting requirement. And we do see this, and you have complete flexibility in that. You could structure a vesting schedule. We've seen as many as 20 years. It depends on how long you want to keep those executives within the organization. These Section 162 plans are very easy to administer. There's no balance sheet liability, but it does require some consistency of contributions to get the most efficient use of the policies. And then, of course, they are life insurance, so there is individual underwriting to consider, which can be problematic for some executives actually obtaining the coverage. Another option would be a supplemental executive retirement plan, which is a SERP. And this type of arrangement is really a defined benefit to the executive that's paid sometime in the future. So it is essentially the executive pension plan. And some common plan designs might be 3 times final average earnings to be paid over 5 years, beginning at age 60, or a $500,000 lump sum payout to be paid at age 65. And we typically see these with more larger organizations. Most smaller organizations, they don't really like the commitment of having that long-term liability on their balance sheet. And as we've seen the transition from 401k or from pensions to 401ks for those same reasons, the most popular option, the most attractive option from an executive plan standpoint is a 409A arrangement, which is a non-qualified deferred compensation plan. These plans are designed to really attract and retain. They're designed for a specific group of executives within the firm. You have complete flexibility from a contribution standpoint. For contributions to individual executives, they can be part of the percentage of their compensation to make up for some of the gaps in the retirement income. They can be tied to individual performance. We will also often help organizations to actually define a matrix if they wanted to tie any kind of bonus contributions to company performance. So we might look at targeted revenue streams or some increase in EBITDA, or looking at sales growth, those types of things where you can make contributions to one executive and not another. So you have a tremendous amount of flexibility. And again, with the golden handcuff component, you can structure a vesting schedule that really meets your needs from a company perspective. Executives can also contribute their own contributions. There are no limits on these types of arrangements. So it can be a very powerful tool to build substantial wealth, substantial assets for the executive. But there are some considerations related to these plans. The trade-off of having very tax advantage, unlimited contribution type arrangements, it is an asset of the company and will always remain that way. So it sits on the balance sheet, and therefore it could be accessible by creditors in the event of a bankruptcy. However, with appropriate education to the executive and certain trust arrangements, we can kind of alleviate some of that concern regarding contributions into the plan. This is, of course, a very high-level review of these types of arrangements. Any consideration for your own organization would be very customizable to meet your needs over the long term, but these do work very well in that retention mode. So one of the other components that is often overlooked is that of executive disability arrangements. These executives are very high earners in most cases, and protecting their income is absolutely essential to them. They've worked very hard to achieve the results that they have. And this, from a benefit perspective, is more so about stability. And one of the dilemmas that we see really is the fact that a majority of their income is sourced from outside of their base compensation. Most long-term disability arrangements provide a percentage coverage of their base compensation only, but a lot of their other compensation is sourced in terms of bonus, and that's where they receive a majority of the compensation. So what we see with long-term disability is that coverage gap where most will cover, say, 60% of your base compensation up to a certain cap, maybe $10,000 a month. Well, for high earners, that limits a lot of their coverage. So this was an analysis that we did of a recent firm. You can see on the lower axis what their long-term disability covers, but the majority of the executives in the lighter blue section are outside of the current long-term disability. So what we want to do is evaluate that and make sure that we have the appropriate coverage in place. And now might be an appropriate time to really take a close look at that as we've seen significant changes in wages in the near term. So again, these are just a few options to think about for your own organization, and with strategic design and targeted education to the executives to make sure that they appreciate the benefits that are being provided. They can really go a long way in taking care of your mission critical employees. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Chris, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And last but not least, we're going to talk about how you can create a leading work environment. As I mentioned at the beginning of my comments, while not specifically benefits related, Everything we're talking about today is meant to help you attract and retain talent. And so we believe that the two concepts we're going to talk about here are very relevant and on point today. Specifically, we're going to talk about onboarding and workplace flexibility. So onboarding is very important. It's essential that when you get that new hire that you worked so hard to finally bring into your organization, that you prioritize onboarding and initial training day one. There's a very short window of time to create that positive first impression and convey the why factor for joining the company. And notice that I said why factor, not wow factor. So the fact that you have this fancy lunchroom, or maybe there's a fitness center, isn't ultimately why an employee is going to stay or why they're going to leave. People want to do work that has meaning and value, and that aligns with not only the company's objectives, but their own individual objectives. So they need to understand the why factor for being part of your organization. A well-structured onboarding process drives employee confidence, engagement, and ultimately productivity, meaning more profitability for the company and a better name and recognition for your company. So where's the problem? Well, the focus tends to be on the recruiting and the hiring process. The average company spends $4,000 in 24 days to hire the average worker. Of course, as Chris just alluded to in this conversation with respect to executives, that is going to be a longer period of time and more money for key leadership. But the point is this, that if you don't get the onboarding process right, the company could end up losing that employee or finding that they had the wrong employee to begin with and having to spend the same money and the same amount of time again to start the process all over again. So why do most onboarding programs miss the mark? Well, most companies view onboarding as a single event versus an ongoing process. Onboarding to many companies means hiring out the proverbial new hire paperwork, benefit forms, compliance, and other things that are relevant to the organization. It can be a lot of rules and regulations and policies shared. While certainly relevant to the company and needed to be shared, that's ultimately what doesn't create the highest level of engagement. So I want to show two dichotomies of getting it right and getting it wrong. I'm sure many of you on the call today are familiar with Zappos, the online shoe company. They also sell a lot of other clothing items today, but they started off selling shoes. They're very well known for their great culture. And in fact, many of you may know that Zappos actually conducts culture tours at their Las Vegas headquarters because they built up such a great reputation. And the reason that they built up such a great reputation is they actually have invested in a 5-week onboarding program that teaches new employees not only about the company, but their position and how they're going to contribute. Conversely, a recent SHRM survey of 350 C-suite executives indicated that they're not getting onboarding right. 76% are lacking in that regard, and in a quarter have no formalized onboarding process whatsoever. So what can a company do to improve their onboarding process? Well, we have 4 different topics that we want to share with you today. The first is to implement a buddy program and intentionally build connections within the company. This not only creates a sense of being welcome for the new hire, but it also has direct correlation to them being able to get up to speed and contribute more quickly. The second is to create a structured process around communication and buy-in. Employees have stated that routine check-ins are paramount to them. In fact, in a recent survey, 39% said it's the #1 thing at work that makes them happy. So if you think about it, not a lot of cost, but a great return by simply having a routine check-in process with your employees. On the same topic, providing access to managers and leaders can also prove to be very beneficial during the onboarding process and even ongoing after that. Managers and leaders can help provide the clarity, help craft vision, and convey strategic priorities so the new hire fully understands what they're signing up for and what their responsibilities are. And last but not least, conduct surveys. Conducting surveys can have a two-pronged approach of benefit, one for the employee and one for the company. From the employee's perspective, leadership is able to gauge their level of connectedness and buy-in and ultimate satisfaction joining the company. From the HR perspective, managers in the human resource world can determine whether the additional time, effort, and energy from senior leaders and the involvement of creating a formalized onboarding process is actually paying its worth. So those are 4 strategies that we're recommending considering for onboarding. And now I would like to talk about workplace flexibility. According to a recent LinkedIn member poll of 5,000 members, flexibility is the fastest rising priority in the US. And this should come as no surprise given the proliferation of hybrid work. On the same topic, Adam Grant, who is a Wharton behavioral psychologist and also a leading author, said, "Flexibility is here to stay, but companies that resist it may not be." Pretty to the point. So how does a company incorporate flexibility? What exactly are we talking about? So we're going to talk about 3 different things: the flexibility to choose when we work, where we work, and perhaps even how much we work. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So when we work. So a company asking themselves, does all work need to be completed on an 8 to 5 basis? Likely not for all positions, but certainly so for others. Consider implementing flexibility where you can. Where we work. So back on the topic of hybrid work and its dramatic prevalence during the past 18 months. So hybrid work is here to stay. So this can mean working at the office. This can mean working at a coffee shop, at home, or some other location. How much we work while still gaining some momentum and still being evaluated by different corporations. Companies have dipped their toe in concepts such as a 36-hour work week or a 4-day work week. The surprising outcome of these experiments has been a higher level of productivity because there's a more concerted and focused effort on the work during those shorter periods of time. But the most important factor here is not whether you implement any of these ideas or not, it's the company having the openness to explore new forms of freedom, of flexibility as it relates to your workplace. So that concludes our remarks for our presentation today on the 5 different topics. We now would definitely welcome any questions or dialogue that you have to gain more clarity on any of the concepts that we discussed with you today. You can use the chat box below, or you can type in your request as well. And Tammy, if you can provide us with any additional guidance on that, if there's anything you would like to add.
Next to your name in the attendee list, you can use the raise the hand button. That will show us that you are interested in asking a question, and we'll go ahead and unmute you. As we wait for any question, Michael, Mike, Krista, Scott, any of you have any other closing comments or comments on the others' presentations?
I guess the only closing comment, Tammy, would just be that the general premise of everything we presented today, we know there's obviously a very difficult and challenging work environment. There's not a conversation that any of the 4 of us don't have that doesn't revolve around some shortage of talent that companies are trying to obtain today. And so all the strategies that we've discussed today are really focused on helping companies positively differentiate themselves, so hopefully they can obtain the talent they need, distinguish themselves in a favorable way from other companies and help them position themselves for long-term success. That's ultimately the overall focus of today's presentation.
Would anybody else like to comment? Scott, would you like to share your company website with the attendees for follow-up questions?
Sure. Our company website is www.lavascogroup.com.
Great. And everybody
And you
can
can-
go there for questions or follow-up.
Yes.
Great. As I don't see any questions, we're going to go ahead and close the webinar. I'd like to thank Scott, Michael, Mike, and Chris for your time and your expertise. And thank you to the audience for being here today. The survey and certificate are now available on the webinar registration site. The recording of this webinar will be available shortly also. Please come find our upcoming programs at webinars.michamber.com. Today's program is copyright 2021 by the Michigan Chamber of Commerce with all rights reserved. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.